right, so thank you. So now let's get on with the introduction of our program today. I'm going to ask Dr. Anthony Hood. He always says, no, just Anthony. And I says, no, Dr. Anthony Hood, to introduce today's speaker. Dr. Hood is the EVP and Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at First Horizon Bank. And he has been a member of our club since 2019. Anthony, introduce our speaker, please, sir.
Thank you, President Thornton, and good afternoon, everybody. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing my friend, my high school classmate, Victor A. Terry. Victor and I went to high school together at Ramsey, along with his girlfriend at the time and now his wife of I don't know how many years. Victor has been a really good friend and really just a peer advisor over the years. Like me, he has two daughters, and so he's given me advice now that I have a teenager in the house, and he recently gave me some advice on being a father of girls, what they call them, girl dad. You know, when we were kind of joking before the meeting started, a lot of times when you guys think about State Farm, you think about Jake from State Farm. But those of us who know Victor, we think about Vic from State Farm. We call him Vic. But Victor has been with State Farm for over 20 years. He and I both did a stint at Alabama. We finished at other universities after the University of Alabama. But he's been there for a very long time. And when you look at his bio, and I talked to him the other day, and I told him, I'm not going to sit here and read your bio. He's like, please, thank you. But he has a very, very impressive background. You named the job at State Farm. Victor has held that job. And I was just extremely excited last year when I saw the announcement. Actually, he contacted me before it was announced that he was going to be promoted to VP of Public Affairs and Chief Diversity Officer at State Farm, their inaugural and first diversity officer. And so I called myself giving him advice and tips and people I wanted to connect him with. And little did I know, just 2 months later, I was being contacted by First Horizon about taking on the same position. I had to call him. I was like, man, I don't know what to do. Should I take this role? And so he was just very instrumental at just kind of walking me through the thought process, what I was getting into and things like that. It's a very complex role and it's a very important role. So Victor is going to explain that role, and I'm just really excited for you guys to be introduced to him. So without further ado, Victor A. Terry.
Thank you, man.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Anthony, am I coming through okay?
You're good. You sound great.
Right. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Anthony, for that introduction. That means a ton to me. When we talked the other day, I told you, I said, just introduce me how you know me. And you and I go way back, and you know me all too well. I want to thank President Thornton for allowing me to be a part of your Kiwanis Club of Birmingham meeting today. I've heard it reiterated multiple times. The largest and the most prominent Kiwanis Club in the world. Anthony made that point to me as well, because we talked about this meeting actually about midsummer, early fall of 2020. I also want to thank Regia. She's been really helpful in just communicating about today and what to expect and getting me prepared. It's my pleasure to be here with you today on behalf of State Farm to share a little bit about diversity and inclusion. And as I heard you open up your meeting and introduce your new members and the work that they are involved in, I began to think to myself, I don't know if this group needs much education as I hear about some of the things that a really small portion of your membership actually does on a day-to-day basis. And my guess is the rest of your membership reflects the same values and heart and mindset about serving others. And your motto, we build by serving, I think is very much appropriate for the little bit of time that I want to share with you. There's three things I want to share, and then I hope to leave time for some questions at the end. But I want to share the compelling need for business to be consciously inclusive and promote diversity and why that's important now more than ever. I want to share a little bit about what State Farm has done to become a more mature organization with respect to diversity and inclusion. And then I want to end with what you can do personally, actions that you can take today to be an ally for underrepresented and marginalized groups, and how you can promote more equitable opportunities for those that you lead in your individual firms, or those that you may mentor and develop. But before I do that, at State Farm, we have a unique way of introducing ourselves, and it's actually a part of our diversity and inclusion platform. It goes beyond the titles that we have, the roles that we've had in the past, the number of places that we've been, and it's designed really to pull back the layers of the surface to really reveal who we are as a means of connecting to one another, finding common ground, looking for opportunities to show empathy, and through that build a more inclusive culture. And we call this platform I Am Who I Am. So I'm going to share my I Am Who I Am story with you. I'm Victor Terry. I grew up a free lunch kid in a single parent home in Birmingham, Alabama. Now, I don't have a sense of shame about that, but rather a sense of pride, because I know how far I've come. I'm the oldest of three, and my baby sister works for State Farm. I'm a product of an initiative to further integration in Birmingham City schools by way of school busing for most of my childhood. It took 2 buses and about an hour and a half for me to get to school every day. And despite a less than privileged set of circumstances growing up, I was surrounded and raised by loving maternal and paternal extended families. My 2 grandmothers, who passed away in 2018 and 2019, and the lives that they led were examples of unfailing love, sacrifice, and dedication to family. They rooted me in the idea of having the right principles, showing grace, working hard, and having the right amount of pride in self. Through them, I've been given a sense of all that is truly important in life. And every day I strive to extend these elements to my wife, Therese, who I've known since the 6th grade, our 2 amazing daughters, Malia and Morgan, my siblings, Corey and Crystal, friends and colleagues. I've had more mentors than I can count, and I've been fortunate enough to be invited into the lives of people from whom I have learned a great deal. My Christian faith has brought me through many personal peaks and valleys, and I am immeasurably grateful to have a career at State Farm, an organization that has continued to allow me the opportunity to earn the trust and confidence to serve others at a high level. I'm a Samford University graduate, but I yell Roll Tide on the weekends with my family. I am Victor Alexander Terry. I am who I am. And so I hope that gives you a sense of how we interact with one another and how we introduce one another or introduce ourselves at State Farm. That platform is totally voluntary. People don't have to do it. The level of transparency and vulnerability is reflective of what that individual wants to share. And so everyone's story is a little different. It may not be as revealing as I have chosen mine to be, but as a role model and an example for others, I chose to be very transparent and very vulnerable. And what I can tell you, I've shared that story on more than one occasion. And the number of emails and calls and text messages that I get from people who can identify in one way or another of the many things that I've mentioned, I think has done a lot just to create a more inclusive environment here at State Farm. I've been in the insurance industry for over 20 years, but it's not at all what I set out to do. It just really happened that way. If you happen to have had a chance to read my story about my experience at Samford University, then you know it was the advice of a mentor and then college professor, and truly, pure luck that I ended up with State Farm. And it's been a great experience. State Farm is a great brand. We are a Fortune 36 organization. We will celebrate 100 years in business next year. And we have dominated the personal lines insurance category for the last 8 decades. But what I know is it's a noble profession. It is the underpinning of the financial system of pretty much any developed economy. It is stable, and the pandemic has proven that. It is enduring, But ultimately, it's about helping people plan for the expected and eventually recover when the unexpected happens. But as much as all of that is true, insurance is very mature. There is lots of competition, especially in the personal lines category. And in fact, insurance is often, it's last time I've checked for several years in a row, has been the number 1 or 2 advertising category compared to any other industry. So you can't turn anywhere without hearing or seeing an insurance ad. And as I say that, you're probably nodding your head to yourself and saying it's true. So between insurance and telecom, so think Verizon and AT&T and Sprint, et cetera, and beer, there's more money spent on those advertising categories than almost anything else. So those are some elements that we have to deal with. The other thing that I would tell you is that most of the market, regardless of what I think and what many of my colleagues at State Farm feel, most of the market sees our primary product, auto insurance, as a commodity. Now, they may choose to do business with one company or another for a variety of reasons, but more people believe that it doesn't matter where you get it from. Of course, we hope they always choose us. And I know probably many of you, with an audience this big, many of you are our customers, and I thank you for your business. But at the end of the day, it's still very much people driven. And my guess is that if not all, many of you also work in very mature industries like finance or telecom or even power. But even if you don't, regardless of how sexy your industry may be, no matter how much artificial intelligence or blockchain technology that may be present in your category or your firm, you still need talent. You have to have talented people. And so individual firms, my firm and yours, in order for us to achieve growth, we have to broaden our talent pool, and that talent pool clearly has to be diverse. Some information that was recently shared with me, and this is a global number, but certainly is directionally accurate for the United States, that globally 77% of talent professionals say diversity will be very important to the future of recruiting. And I think that's obvious for most people, but I think it bears repeating because it's going to become even more so in the future. And so for us at our individual firms, whether you're an entrepreneur or you work for a large organization, we must attract, develop, and grow diverse talent so that that highly qualified diverse talent shows up in a way that they can be the very best version of themselves so that your firm and my firm can compete and win customers, and so that those customers can see a reflection of themselves in the organizations that they choose to do business with. Last summer, I came across a report by the Brookings Institution. It's a very prominent think tank in Washington, D.C. Many of you are probably familiar with them. The report shared that today, 54% of the United States population is millennial or younger. So the oldest millennials right now are about 40, 41 years old. From that age group on down, there's more of them than anybody else. But what really struck me is that 1/2 of that group considers themselves a racial or ethnic minority. And so these are the customers that are highly sought after for any industry. It's certainly the consumer group that we target in our advertising. This is a group that's going to help practically any firm grow their business, and they very much are in motion. But research also shows that 50% of this group agree that LGBTQ+ rights are important to them. And they also agree that 6 out of 10 agree that social justice topics are increasingly important to them. And depending on their political leaning, they may be right or left, and that number may be higher or lower. But this is a group of the consuming population that cares deeply about these topics. That same research showed that 68% of consumers under 40 would be willing to pay a little more to do business with a company that focus on issues that improve society. And so for all of us on this call, our organizations have to be in a position to serve this market with empathy. So empathy today is at a premium, social capital is at a premium, and those two things are the things that are going to be rewarded not only today, but even more so in the future. This group of consumers want to do business with an organization that reflects their values, reflects their opinions of all the things that I've mentioned before. And none of this is going to go away. It's only going to grow. And I think we've seen evidence of that in the last year. I want to transition a bit, talk a little bit about State Farm and some of the things that we've done in order to become a more mature organization with regard to diversity and inclusion. And I also share with you that next year, I think I shared earlier, we'll be 100 years old. Well, from the very beginning, we were founded in 1922. Our very first board of directors included a woman by the name of Minnie Jones. So in 1922, State Farm Mutual Automobile Insurance Company had a woman on its board of directors. That was only 2 years after women's suffrage was achieved. But I would say in a more meaningful way, in a more contemporary way, State Farm has had about 2 decades of building a culture of inclusion and belonging through our diversity efforts. And quite frankly, it's central to everything we do. So we think about diversity across 4 imperatives: the moral imperative, the legal imperative, the talent imperative, and the business imperative. The moral imperative is pretty straightforward. It's what you think it is. The legal imperative, of course, there are laws against discrimination in the workplace. Those 2 are easy. We don't even spend any time on that, but it's the talent imperative and the business imperative that really allow our efforts to come alive. It allows for more success and, more importantly, for sustainability on a long-term basis. And so we take those 4 imperatives and then we apply them across a 4-part framework: workplace, marketplace, community, and supplier diversity. And I'll give you just a couple of quick examples. So when it comes to the workplace, many people are familiar with employee resource groups or business resource groups or affinity groups. Every firm calls them something different. We have 12 in total, about 10,000 members. It's very comprehensive. It covers every dynamic of diversity that you could think of, including military, veterans, people with disabilities, et cetera. We also have a cross section of those ERGs that we call an incubator group that we tap into for customer insights, and they also help us, solve business challenges. The other thing I would say is we have a rather mature and a multi-layered structure that I found when I came into this role as State Farm's first Chief Diversity Officer. As I connected with people in the industry, I learned what we have is very unique. There are very few organizations that not only have a Chief Diversity Officer, but also a governance council. And for us, as a small group of senior leaders who really act in a way to help us shape our diversity and inclusion strategy for the organization. They act as a significant influence lever, and they test our readiness for what we want to do next on our journey to become more mature. In addition to that, we have people at the individual department level. We call it our Enterprise Diversity and Inclusion Council. And they help us on the day-to-day tactical execution of the strategy that the Governance Council and I come up with. But not only that, I'm very lucky to have a full-time staff, including myself. There are 16 people on our D&I team. And as I have networked with CDOs of many large organizations, I would say on average, that team is about 3, maybe 4. There's only one other organization that I've personally interacted with that I know has a larger team, and they happen to be global. And I think they have about 20 people on their team. The last thing I'll say about our workplace strategy is we have a learning plan that focuses on behavior and not just awareness. And we think that's really important. When it comes to marketplace, of course, we primarily distribute our products to our independent contractor State Farm agents. And so if you do business with State Farm, you know who your agent is, and you know the people who work for that individual. It's really important to us, obviously, that we have diversity within those ranks. And then everything that we do from a marketing and advertising and public relations standpoint needs to be reflective of our market. And so if you watch the Super Bowl this year, you not only you saw Jake from State Farm, you saw Drake from State Farm. which is very consistent for us, not at all off-brand or out of character for what we want to do to show the marketplace that we are very much inclusive. The last two things I'll mention here are community. So in addition to being Chief Diversity Officer and Vice President of Public Affairs, Media Relations, and Public Relations, just recently, I was assigned the responsibility for taking over our entire philanthropic and charitable giving apparatus, including a State Farm Foundation. So corporate responsibility now reports to me. And we have a long history of building safer, stronger, better educated communities through that charitable and philanthropic effort. There are about 25 organizations that we have long-standing, deep relationships with that cover a broad spectrum of diversity. And we work with those organizations to do good in the communities that they serve. And then finally, with respect to supplier diversity, we have annual goals that we set. We have a very transparent reporting process with our senior executive team at State Farm. And just recently, because of the pandemic, we wanted to make up more ground. We're not quite achieving our expectations that we have for ourselves. So we recently held a virtual supplier diversity event, a matchmaking event, and we had 67 minority, LGBTQ, women and veteran-owned businesses come spend time with us virtually, learn about our processes, what our needs are. They shared more about themselves, and through that, we found some partnerships that we can really take advantage of and move forward. The last thing I'll mention here before I move on to specific action items I think we can all take to be better allies is back in 2018, our president, chairman, and CEO, Michael Tipsord, signed the CEO Action for Diversity and Inclusion, which still to this day is the largest CEO-driven commitment to diversity and inclusion. And we do a lot of exchanging of ideas with that cohort to help us be better, and we share ideas with that group to help them on their D&I journey as well. Just recently, we added 5 new members to our board of directors, and one of them was a woman and 2 were African-American men. And so now out of 16 members of our board of directors, 4 are people of color and 4 are women. And we're excited about that progress, and we certainly want to see it continue. I want to transition now to action items, right? So all this is great, but to truly be an advocate for diversity and inclusion, all of us have to move from knowing to doing, and that's really what allyship is all about. I was reading a business article recently. It was about execution, but I thought it was very much relatable to what happens in the D&I space. And what it talked about is execution falls in 2 buckets: stroke of the pen or behavior changes. And as it described stroke of the pen, think of this as things that you can do, significant sweeping decisions, actions you can take to help you move the needle. They're generally big, they may be expensive, and they generally have positive consequences. So it could be something like, an organization creates a special day to honor diversity and inclusion. They hire a really expensive external speaker, or they may hire a consulting firm to offer some training. They may add new members to their board of directors. I would put that in the stroke of the pen category. But the true magic, where diversity and inclusion really come alive for any organization and the individual, is within behavior changes. It's within the habits of behaviors that we all demonstrate on a day-to-day basis that allow for sustainability and ultimate success. And so we all have an obligation and opportunity to be an ally, even if we are already a member of an underrepresented or marginalized group. So as I think about myself, right, I'm an African-American male, but I also know I have privilege as a cisgender heterosexual man. I have privilege in that way that someone who may be trans or non-binary doesn't have. And so an ally knows that they are a part of a group that enjoys some type of privilege. and is always working to understand that privilege and then end oppression of others by taking action. When you understand your privilege, it doesn't mean that you've never had to struggle or everything's been easy for you in your life. It simply means that there are some things in life that you don't have to experience because of who you are. And depending upon, what's most relevant to you in that situation, you may switch from being a part of a marginalized or underrepresented group to being an ally. What's most important, though, and what I want to leave you with today is that allies have to work to create and sustain safe working environment, a welcoming environment that's respectful, and an equitable workplace. And you believe that the workplace and the community is enriched by the presence of diverse experiences, perspective, ideas, and beliefs. And you take action to learn more about the oppression of others. You seek to develop a sense of compassion for all people. You seek to diminish prejudices, assumptions, and negativity in the moment, which is really important, in the moment. And you discuss differences in a non-judgmental manner, develop a sense of curiosity. You are comfortable being uncomfortable at times as you learn and grow, use inclusive language, and then ultimately work to create and sustain meaningful change by doing all of those things. And so that's a really long-winded way of saying you have to do the work, and it has to be action-oriented. And so I think we all have an opportunity to be better allies in whatever it is that we do. Whatever member of what group that we're a part of. And so I leave that with you as a challenge as we think about our time today, together today. So Anthony, I want to kind of close out my thoughts and remarks there. I promised you I would leave some time for questions. And so I want to do that. And I'll turn it back over to you to see how you want to facilitate that.
All right. Well, thank you for what an excellent presentation, Vic. We really appreciate that. You've covered some very significant, important, and salient points that I think we all can grow and benefit from. So Regia is not just about communicating with our speakers. She does a great job with Q&A, so I'm going to turn this over to her. But as she gets ready, let me put this out there. So it seems to me, Victor, that those corporations that have done well are the corporations who are doing well in this space. That's not the case for so many companies. And you made the point that this is not going to change, it's not going to go away. So for those corporations that have not necessarily been very active in that space, what would you say when it's not a part of your culture?
Yeah.
But I know I need to move in this direction. Do you have any points that you would share? You've covered them, but I wanted you to hit that point.
Yeah, no, I think I follow you, President Thornton. You first have to do an intellectually honest assessment of where your organization is. And if this is an area that you have not spent the time on that you would have liked for whatever reason, and you are really in the infancy stages of taking this on, you really have to do that assessment first. And I think probably the biggest mistake that any firm could take is trying to do too much too soon. And so you got to start small, and that starts with your most senior leadership. We know the grassroots of any firm is all in on this, right? In some way, shape, form, or fashion. That's easy. That's table stakes. That's going to happen. To some degree, a number of your leaders are going to say, hey, we need to do more. But your senior leadership team has to find a way to kind of crack the space that they've been in and allow for everyone to be transparent, to be vulnerable, to talk about their lived experiences, how they've participated in the past. And for an organization that maybe has not done that before, they probably need some outside help to kind of facilitate that. And then from there, I think there'll be natural opportunities that present itself in terms of what might we do next to take the next step, down this diversity and inclusion journey?
Great, thank you so much for that. Regia, what do we have?
Thank you. Victor, in the course of your work, what is the most common criticism of corporate D&I initiatives that you've encountered in conversations with you, and what is your response or reply to that?
Yeah, it's a fair question. Well, I would say the most common criticism is there are far more good ideas and initiatives and things that we can tackle than we probably have the appropriate amount of focus and attention to have them be successful. I will tell you, when I started in this role, I describe it as feeling like I was shot out of a cannon. I literally felt like the whole world was coming at me at the same time. Now, that's a good thing, right? So I always say often, it's good to be needed. It's good to be wanted. And I've got notes from people in my company from, hey, congratulations, to, hey, congratulations, Victor. Here are the 50 things you need to do, and I'll follow up with you in 2 weeks to see how much progress you've made, and everything in between. And all of those suggestions and ideas and questions and desires are appropriately placed. There's nothing wrong with them. But what I have to do is think systemically, I have to think organizationally, and I have to think in an enterprise-wide basis. And I have to ask myself, what's in the best long-term interest of our employee group as a whole that helps State Farm become a more mature organization? We focus on what those few things are. We drive results in order to make that happen. And then we ask ourselves, what's next? I would say that's probably the biggest critique.
Thank you. What energizes you most about this work?
A couple of things. Regardless of what kind of work you're in, it's often said leadership is lonely. And that's certainly true if you are a leader in the diversity and inclusion space. But I am incredibly encouraged when I have those quiet moments one-on-one with individuals or a small group, or I'll get a really thoughtful text message or an email with someone, whether it be me doing an engagement internally or someone participating in a program, whatever the case may be, and they talk about how proud they are of our brand and how we show up, how we're showing up even better than we have been before, how we show up externally. And it's those moments of thanks and gratitude and recognition that mean a lot. And when you go into leadership, particularly when you're a senior executive, those moments are often delayed. And you have to know that, you have to accept that, but it doesn't make them any less special when you get them. And so I always appreciate when that happens to me.
Thank you. We have a question here from Julie. She says, or Julie, do you want to ask this directly? You can raise your hand if so. If not, I can go ahead. Okay. We are a small company that cannot afford a dedicated DEI person. We have a committee that is fully supported by senior leadership. However, it's very difficult to move beyond committee ideas that feel like we have checked off a box of, to do, and move it to create, believe in, and enthusiasm for this work.
Yeah. So what to do next, right?
Huh?
I said, so what should you do next, right?
I'm thinking that's right. I'm thinking that's where that's leading. What could they do in that type of situation?
Well, again, I do think, listen, so here's what I say within State Farm. We should treat diversity and inclusion just like we do every other business imperative, right? We have goals and aspirations to achieve profitable growth in our business lines. We want to make it easier for customers to do business with us. We want to lower costs for our customers. Diversity and inclusion should be as much a part of business imperative, and it is, as anything else. Now, if you appreciate that and you know that, then you also understand the power of momentum. And so this is my answer to you. And momentum, it's like compound interest. Initially, it's not very remarkable, but over time, consistently executed, it is probably the most fascinating financial concept out there, right? Progress and being a more mature organization when it comes to diversity and inclusion is no different. You have to find that initial spark, you have to build on it, you have to have success, and you have to allow that momentum to build over time. Now that can be frustrating because the grassroots elements of your organization are always going to want more sooner, which should then inspire you and motivate you to get that next win and then to build on that to ultimately get to a place where you look around and you really feel good about the progress that you've made. So you have to be a little patient, but still, appropriately focus on the importance and the urgency of the task at hand.
It's like I'm on mute there.
Bridget, okay, go ahead.
Thanks.
See, it doesn't just happen to me, huh?
That's right, Larry. It happens to us all. Victor, what are some of the biggest obstacles and problems that you encounter? I imagine even though State Farm has, created this position and obviously supports this mission, what are some challenges that you're faced with? I know you mentioned earlier about leadership at the top, it can be lonely, but can you expand any further there?
Well, one of the things I'll say, so State Farm is a large organization. We have 57,000 employees. We have 19,000 independent contractor State Farm agents. They're not employees, but they're part of our family. They primarily distribute our products and services. So when you have that, just like in society, you have a very broad spectrum of ideas and thoughts and social political views and political affiliations. And so you never find yourself, in complete harmony across that spectrum, right? And so like most things in business, it can be very difficult to achieve that. I think when you find yourself in that moment when you feel challenged by one perspective or another, and I will assure you, although we're talking about diversity and inclusion, it would be unwise to assume the challenges only come from one end of the spectrum. Depending on the topic and what people are looking for, it can come from both ends. And so you have to recenter on what are our company values, right? What is it that we believe is on brand for us, both internally and externally? And what do we think is in the long-term best interest of our employee group as a whole? What's in the long-term best interest of our customer group as a whole? And you have to center there and allow that to guide your actions, decisions, habits, and behaviors. And if you do that, I think you'll find yourself, in a better place long-term than if you are just kind of vacillating back and forth between whatever is the loudest or strongest cry at that particular moment in time.
Okay, can we slip one more in?
Yeah, the last question is outstanding presentation, Victor. Thank you. Do you speak to companies who are getting started on this? And I'm thinking as a follow-up, perhaps a member may want to get in contact with you, if so.
I haven't done a ton of that. I've done more groups like Kiwanis Club. I've done, student organizations and things of that nature. Oftentimes I would describe myself, obviously, you heard my I am who I am story. So I always say I've been living this my whole life. But I grew up in the business of State Farm. So I am not a long time practitioner. I grew up in sales and distribution. That's what I've been doing for 23 years, both as a State Farm agent and as a senior executive. So there are individuals who have dedicated their lives to this. And so while I may not have grown up a practitioner in the academic sense, I do know how to get things done within my organization. I do know how to move work. I do know what is on brand for us, what's aligned for our values, and what we stand for as an organization. And we have a clear line of sight on how we become a more mature organization. And I think the combination of those three served me really well in this function.
All right. Well, Thank you so much, Victor, for being with us, and we appreciate you taking this time to kind of demystify the DEI role, because it is a mystery for a number of corporations who really are serious and dedicated to doing the right thing to prepare themselves for this next 20 to 25 years. So thanks for the impactful presentations, very powerful. And we appreciate you taking the time to do that. It sounds like with the staff of the number that you shared, you're busy. So thanks for breaking away, man, just to kind of do this to help us understand more about this space. As a token of our appreciation, we're going to make a contribution to the A.G. Gaston Boys and Girls Club on your behalf. Okay, so thank you so much. We appreciate you being with us. Please answer our calls if we call you again, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, President Thornton. And thank you. I grew up in the A.G. Gaston Boys Club in Birmingham, Alabama.
Awesome.
When that question was asked, I immediately went there. That club shaped me in a meaningful way. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Personal culture. Personal culture, I call that. Well, listen, man, have a great one.
Yes.
So let's chat just a little bit about upcoming programs next week. We have author and editor-in-chief of Birmingham Bread and Butter magazine, Kareem Shamsi Basha, joining us for our Youth of the Year program. He won the 2021 Caldecott honor for his latest illustrated children's book, The Catman of Aleppo. That should be exciting. That should be interesting. So look at the remainder of the programs that will be coming up. I hope that you'll be a part of us. I always like to thank our today's program participants, Tyler O'Connor, Allison Nani, Mary O'Neill and Carla Crowder, Bill Praddock and Chris Nix, Emily Weichel and Key Hudson, Dr. Anthony Hood, Victor Terry for this great presentation today, Rajia Shaheed. Thanks, everybody. Have an awesome week, and we look forward to having you next week, same time. We are adjourned.